now we are going to travel all the way to Bend, Oregon, and visit with Kellen Batum from Special Ops Forge. Hello, Kellen.
Hey everybody, so I'm hoping you can hear me over, I got my Forge going. My son Silas is going to be running the camera, and so I might be giving him a couple camera directions as we go. I'm going to go somewhere kind of on the lighter side of things. Over the last few weeks while we've been trying to set these videos up and doing some test runs, I realized that I had a tripod in my garage, but I had no way to attach my camera to it. And in hindsight, I'm also seeing that this tripod is pretty schwambly. I have a hard time seeing this thing lasting very long. And so my next project will be building a tripod, but I kind of devised a phone holder for a tripod. Because I think that in this digital age that we're in, and especially with everyone on lockdown, having a way to hold your phone that's not in your hand during these digital meetings might be really useful for some folks. So I have devised a kind of bare bones phone holder that I would love to kind of challenge the rest of you with, like, make your own if you come up with one. This is just purely utilitarian and is not super pretty, but I think you could make these things be quite attractive if you had a longer than a half an hour to make one. I tried to bring it down just so I could fit it in. And so before I start, I just want to kind of talk about what the things of a tripod are, or the things of a phone holder would be, which is a connection to a tripod. Mine has got a 1/4-20 screw coming out of the bottom of it. To have at least 3 points of contact to your phone. My phone's got a pretty kind of rugged case on it already, so I'm not so concerned about just metal on phone contact, but I could see how bringing in another material, plastics, leather, wood, something as a buffer to hold the phone could be really useful. And to make it adjustable, because phones can go 2 ways, right? And so I made this slide, which is kind of, I think, the most interesting forging that I'll be doing today is this piece versus the phone holder. Any questions before I get started?
No, we do not have any questions from the gallery at this moment, so you just go on right ahead.
Great. So I think for everyone's connection might be a little different if they have their own tripod or they're just trying to put it onto a block. My base on it is at least 1.5 inches square. And so I have left, this piece started as 2.5 inches wide by 3 inches. I did some prep work so you guys wouldn't have to watch me do just basic fabrication stuff. I have marked off a hole. It's slightly off-centered from that, so my phone would hang off the front of the tripod. I pre-marked out the 2 holes that will hold the slide on. Nipped these corners just because I thought it'd be better than having them out. And then I removed these corners so that we can fold up this edge here to kind of create the 2 of the 3 points of contact.
And could you, it was asked if you could actually hold that up, hold the finished product up closer to the video, and then we can better connect.
I can't see the camera, so I'm hoping I'm holding it correctly.
I think just keeping it still for a moment and then slowly you can expand it, but yeah, that's perfect. I hope that's fine for y'all tuning in from your computer.
So it's pretty basic. I'm gonna get some parts in the forge. Before I do, I just wanted to show you, this is kind of the base plate that works for me. This piece is 1/8 by 1/2 inch. I've marked off 3/4 down, which will end up being my top tab. And then I chiseled in a center line where I'll split this. I stopped 3/8 of an inch from the end, knowing that I will just dress off the end. I'm sure it could be forged. I'm going to take kind of some cheap ways around this taking too incredibly long. But these are the two parts. I'm going to get them both in, heating up. But before I go, you know, I like to talk about this tool ahead of time because I'll just be using it later. At the top of this, since here is the back plate of where the phone is going to rest, the top one had to joggle forward 1/8 of an inch. And not only does it have to joggle forward 1/8 of an inch, but it has to have this top bent down. And it was pretty tight tolerances for putting some kind of a joggle together. So I made this tool that has this little joggle section in here. Hoping you can see that. So that I'll be able to drop this in, pinch it together, take it to the anvil and hit it to set the joggle. And then once it's together, I'll probably use my induction forge for this part, but I'll heat just the tip up and then clamp this whole thing in the vise to knock that tab over. So I already have that rake built into this tool. Silas, I think we're going to go over to the treadle hammer section first.
And I know people are going to ask about your power hammer and treadle hammers. So if you want to give us a quick rundown on these tools.
Sure. Well, while he's setting up, the treadle hammer, I bought one from Mark Manley. I was one of the lucky few. I believe there are 4 in existence of this model, and I would be willing to say that we probably have us 4 have the nicest treadle hammers on the planet. Silas, do you want to set it right up for the treadle hammer view? Hopefully someday he's willing to make more for other people, because I know a lot of folks want to get their hands on one. So I've got just a hot cut chisel here. I'd already cut in the line, so I'm just kind of setting that line deeper. And I'm just going to flatten it out. So I've just cut most of the line in. I can see that I was maybe a little off dead center for some of it, but it shouldn't affect us too much. I'm going to throw this piece back in for the next heat as we split this.
So what experience prompted you to design this cell phone holder?
Well, I needed one, and I started to fabricate it out of some pieces of angle, and I was just a little bit into it and said to myself, well, this could be easily done with sheet steel. And I started sort of down the road of Fred Christ had taught a workshop that I'd been with, where we had done a lot of hot cutting and then forming 3D shapes out of a flat plane. And so I kind of started down that road, and I made a few mock-ups, and I think they would all be functional, but I couldn't quite get it down so that it was fast enough to fit this, you know, half-an-hour time slot we were trying to shoot for.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, so I dropped a cutting plate on here. I'm probably gonna do one little pass before it breaks all the way through. Oh, it's starting to tear already, so I'm just going to go for it. And so the metal is going to want to tear on its own as it gets pulled apart. And so, you know, I put the cutting plate there to protect my top die, but I'm really not driving this chisel all the way down. It's the kind of angle of the chisel is tearing the metal just behind where I'm cutting. So just flattening this back out. I'm going to take another heat, and we're going to move over to the vise because I need to open this up a little bit. So grab that in. Got it? Any questions before I jump out of here with this piece?
No questions that I see, so go on ahead.
Great. So I'm just going to try to open up both these ends of the cuts and give me kind of a bottom spot. So I'm just grabbing the very end of this. I've got a pretty tight forward handle here. Coming at both sides. There's going to be some ragged kind of flashing, some rag that happens. And I'll take care of that with a file once I kind of get this thing all the way opened up. Here, before I put it in there, you can see the importance of being dead center. I have more mass on this side than I do on that side, so it's wanting to bow out.
If you could hold it just a little further down in the screen, perfect. Thank you.
You see how on the top side of it now, it's a little thinner than the bottom side. Doesn't take much. Metal's going to want to go where it's got its path of least resistance.
It's a good philosophy to follow.
And this 1/8 inch stock heats up pretty quick in the forge, so it should only be just a second before I'm going to do the same thing to the other side.
Oh. Someone has asked, does the treadle have a place to insert and hold tooling?
Yes, both the top and bottom have 1-inch square holders that he's broached in like a key pin on the side so you can lock them in. Unfortunately, my anvil Hardy is kind of an obscure size. It's like an inch and a 1/16 strong or about there. And so what fits in my hammer doesn't fit in the treadle. And so I kind of have tools for both, where in the perfect world I'd have the same tools for each. So, I mean, I just sunk that down there and kind of dished out the bottom. I'm just going to flatten it back out again really quick. Take a general heat on the whole thing because I want to close it up from being this shape to a little straighter, so then I can open it up the other direction to get at the flashing from the cut so I can grind those out, which could be done with a file. I've got an angle grinder set up right here. I'm going to take that approach for time and ease. So I'm just flattening those out. I know I'm a little far away. You can't really see super well. I was just kind of getting them a little more parallel.
Surprisingly, we could see pretty well what you were doing over there.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm gonna just grab one end in the vise. And I'm gonna use a chisel and drop it into that slot. And I'm just spreading it out so that I can get it both those sides. Right? So it went like to that direction.
All right, hold it a little bit lower, please. Thank you. There you
I've
go.
opened
Nice.
up the other direction from what it had originally naturally opened. I'm just going to quench this off really quick so I can handle it. And run an angle grinder. Here's where it might get loud for just a quick second.
I am going to mute your mic. You thumbs up when you're ready for your sound to come back on. And if anybody has joined us late, you are watching our pilot edition of our first ever digital demonstration sessions. You are watching Kellen Batum right now. He is forging and fabricating a cell phone holder. Why buy one out of plastic when you can make one yourself out of steel? So he's finishing up grinding on the inside, and I'm gonna unmute him now.
I gotta do one more side.
Oh, he's going back, being muted. I just want to thank all of our demonstrators from earlier, Louis Rafleur in Seattle, Washington, and Frank Bobbio. Louis did a marvelous job demonstrating how to create repoussé, chasing and repoussé tools. And then Frank demonstrated forging a bottle opener into a skull head shape, but with his forging press. All right, unmuted, Kellen.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put it back in the forge, and then I'm gonna flatten it back out. And so I want a 1/4 inch channel running down there. I started with the piece of 1/2 inch and split in half. You know, I should have 2 pieces of 1/4 inch on either side. I want a 1/4 inch in the middle so that I end up netting 3/4 of a thickness here. I've taken a piece of 1/4 inch by, I think, 3 flat bar, dressed the edges out so they're a little more round. And then I'm going to sleeve it and tap it together, but first I gotta make this just go back to flat. So I'm gonna start by kind of setting that end in there. It goes a little wonky because it doesn't have a lot of structure to it. It's all 1/8 inch.
Someone was wondering, why can't we hear your forge?
I don't know. I can hear it just fine. Maybe it's my wonderful Bluetooth headset that I have.
It's impressive.
I run a fan-driven propane forge. It's based pretty closely on the Joe Elliott style of forge that he runs in his shop. I worked in his building for many years and really, really liked his forge setup. So I've just tapped both sides, so it's kind of a more consistent 1/4 inch channel. It's not totally flat right now. I think I'm going to take one more quick heat doing that. But I'm also going to flip it around so I can kind of drive the other end onto that piece of 1/4 by 3.
Hunter mentioned when you were talking about Joe's forge, he said, oh, the Joe Elliott special.
It is the Joe Elliott special. Not to be confused with the Daryl Nelson special. They're very similar, though.
Oh. Oh, Mike Hayes has just said the kindest thing. He wrote saying, I'd like to say how much I appreciate the professionalism of the entire meeting and thanks to all the demonstrators for their commitment to providing all the demonstrations. Thank you all. Well, thank you, Mike, because without you and all y'all tuned in from the comfort of your computer or phone, we wouldn't have anything to show right now. Or at least no one to show it to.
Okay, so this is going to be my last little truing heat for this adjustable slot. Trying to get the whole thing down to 1/4 inch and straight. And just get it down to flat. So, I mean, pretty quickly, I've put a slot in this that is going to allow this whole thing to slide. I am going to quench it off. I think we're going to move the camera and do just a little bit of file and grind work to kind of round that corner out, get rid of these little burrs that are happening here and here before we put this piece in to joggle it. Silas, do you want to go to the one in front of the anvil? Yep. Maybe like there. And I'll be right here. So I'm going to start by just getting rid of that inside burr. I'm part of a group here called COMAG. It's the Central Oregon Metal Art Guild. We've got a lot of jewelers in the group. And one of the things that I've taken from the jewelers that I really, really like is a wooden bench pin. I just have this one clamped to the table. This is a piece of hardwood. You can see it's got a slotted V in it, but it also tapers down to the end. It really lets you get a lot of things in there for file work where it's backing in all the right spots. And as I'm sure you all know, files work in one direction. You have to push them. Don't scrub a file. Might get yelled at by your betters.
Oh, Hunter wanted to say excellent camera work, Silas, and I agree.
I'm going to tell him, he can't hear anything. So Hunter just said excellent camera work. Okay, so I'm just going to trim the top of this off so that the whole thing is rounded. And if I had more time or I was trying to be a purist, you could have brought that cut closer to the end and it forged those corners down. But now we've got a slot that is going to be able to be pinned with 2 pins and keep it from moving side to side, but is going to be able to be adjusted. I think for my next little thing, I'm going to heat up this area here for that joggle. So we're going to move the camera to the anvil. And I got to turn my induction forge on really quick, which I have the same one Frank does. I got to say, I got nothing but good things to say about this induction forge. These US solids are really nice. It cost me about $1,000 after shipping to get it to me. I bought a coolant system from AEWI. They're a company that specializes in TIG coolers. I kind of bought a bigger unit. It's a 10-gallon unit. It also costs about $1,000, and I've got about 60 feet of cord run into this thing. So Frank definitely got into it for cheaper than I did, but I don't feel like I got into it for too bad. A little over $2,000 for the whole thing. So I chiseled in a mark right here, just a really light line. Really light line that's 3/4 of an inch down that I'll use for my tab. And so I'm going to use that as an indicator of when I drop it into the tool of how deep I need to go. And so I'm using the induction forge right now to essentially heat the area between those two.
Lisa Geertsen wants you to know. Oh.
Sorry. Yes, what did Lisa want?
I said Lisa Geertsen wants you to know that that brick mountain on the gas forge is intense.
Well, I learned it from Joe, and I sure do like having a brick mountain. Oh, I'm going to slide this in here, right up to that line, and then be able to hold this. And so you can see it, put that joggle in there.
Nice.
Now we're going to move this. Can we move it over to the vise, Silas? So I'm just going to heat the end of this up really quick, and I'll be right back to that vise in 1 second. So now with just this one tool, I was able to put the jog in and bend the top down. Is that a good camera? Yeah. I'm going to cool all this off and throw it onto the table, and then in the vise, work on the next piece. Here, I'll pull this out before I put it away so you guys can see. It's got the joggle in it, top tab, slot. Yep, stay right there. So I'm going to start by just bending this whole mounting plate over to about 90 degrees, and then I'll clean it up. So I had pre-chiseled in a line right at where I wanted that break to be, not to really assist with the break, but just to give me a visual line. I'm pretty close to it. Haven't tightened the vise up very tight, just to kind of get it at the right zone. Take it down. So it's folded, it's gone a little past 90, especially how it dips off. It's just following the curve of the vise. I'm going to throw it back in for some heat. And then drop this square stake tool I've made. It's a piece of 1.5 inch square mild steel, or I think it's 1.25 inch mild steel. It's just got nice flat top. So I'm just going to flatten that top back out. Give it a good eyeball, see if I'm all flat and flat. I appear to be. So now, just for simplicity's sake, I have to put in these little dog ears on the bottom to give my other 2 points of contact. And so I've got this die, which came out of my guillotine. It's got about a 20% rake on it, or 20-degree rake. I will end up just dropping it in here. It doesn't really like to stay by itself. It's a little tricky getting it in place. But to keep the center moving, I'm just going to heat up 1 ear at a time in the induction forge.
Joe wanted to let you know that he sure thinks that was a lot of a joggle tool for such a small joggle.
It sure was a lot of joggle for such a small joggle. So I'm just hitting that outside ear. So it's just folded that little tiny bit up in the corner. And I'm going to flip it and repeat. And I would address that it was so much tool for such a little job. Every time I was trying to do it the traditional ways of doing a joggle with smaller tools, I couldn't seem to keep the joggle in place without losing the bend, or getting the bend in place without losing the joggle. So it kind of felt like I had to capture them both at the same time. So yeah, pretty close. I got both my ears bent, if you can see that. But I lost a little bit of my 90. I'm working over an angled piece. So I'm going to throw the stake tool back in.
Lisa says joggling in place does sound like a challenge.
Joggling in place is really hard. So
this
almost
comment
got
section is cracking.
Okay, so I've got both pieces made. I've got a few holes to put in them. Silas, we're going to go back over there. You want to set it up in front of the anvil? No, I'm going to be over here. I was saying this spot. So might not be the best view of things, but I did mark all these off before forging. And so I am drilling I believe it's 13/64 so that I can tap it to 1/4-20. Let me tell you, last time I buy Makita drills, this one the chuck's really given out on me. I might have to switch over to my good old Milwaukee, which is what I'll believe I'll be buying for a cordless setup next time, or a DeWalt, or a Bosch.
Could you restate what you're currently doing right now with that subpar and now appropriately pared tool?
I am drilling holes. I'm drilling these 3 holes. I'm gonna pull my mock-up here. So it's the 2 holes that'll hold the adjustable piece on and the hole on the bottom. And I believe it's 13/64, which is the size that you need to drill if you want to tap a 1/4-20 hole, which is the size that my tripod has on it, and I had a bunch of 1/4-20 fasteners. Ah, there we go. I'm flipping it to do the other hole. Sure, I can probably handle it from here. Thank you for your help, Silas. I appreciate it. Silas is going to go outside, take a break. Wanted to thank him for his help.
Thank you, Silas. That was beautiful. Wonderful work.
It's getting a little warm in here for him. So normally I would just do this under my drill press, but I moved the operation over here so I wouldn't have to move the camera an extra time. I didn't need to take that off. I should have left that alone. So I'm going to countersink those holes just a little tiny bit. And now I'm going to tap them. So I'm going to put this thing back in here. And our local hardware store carries a whole variety of taps. They've got some that are meant for guns. I believe they're called speed taps. They have 2 flutes on them. They work really well within the gun. Sorry, we got a puppy who tried to break into the shop. Carl, come on, outside.
We were wondering where that puppy was.
Yeah, he tried to take the tripod out, so we decided to keep him on the outdoors. And actually,
Mark T says it's the Carl and Silas slideshow, or sideshow.
It is. So when tapping, these are pretty small holes, so I'm not as concerned about it, but I'll use some ready tap. I'm not plugged in. Tap those 2. So here's the part of the demo where it gets a little tricky because I don't actually have a phone that I can put in this because I'm using my phone. I took some 1/4-20 bolts and they were all a little long, ran them through, and then used a grinder to shorten them to the final length. But instead of doing it again, I am just going to poach the ones off my model.
Oh, Jim has asked a question. How do those taps differ from the norm?
Most of the hand taps I have, and maybe somebody else in the group can speak better to this, but most of the hand taps that I have 3 flutes on them. And so the flutes themselves are a little thinner, And you know, you hear that if you're hand tapping and you go too fast or too hard, you hear that dreaded like ting, and then you've broken your tap off in the piece. These taps only have 2 flutes. They're meant for being in a gun. I will put them in this, and then once I tighten this chuck, I will not over tighten it. And so in case if this tap is going in there and it hits some resistance, it will start to slide in the jaws. And I try to do it at a relatively slow speed. If you have a good cordless gun that has a chuck that holds tight, you can do the same thing by taking it off of the drill setting and just moving it into one of the resistance, you know, clutch settings. But, you know, we've got full adjustment now, and I had ran the math on this one so that it'll fit my 3-inch phone, but it'll also go up to my 6-inch phone, depending on which direction I put it. And if I wasn't using my tripod would come from the bottom. It has its set screw and would hold into here. So this is kind of the bare bones do-it-yourself phone holder. There's about 1 million different ways you could do this, and I would encourage anyone and everyone to make one if they don't have one, need one.
Yes. That was excellent. Yay. Thank you so much, Kellen. If we have any follow-up questions, y'all can start asking those now, but we're seeing thank you, applause from Hunter. Nice work, dude. Jim Carley is asking, is there time for a shop tour? Very, very nice is what Jack Pine says.
I'll do a shop tour. I'm going to take this off my tripod so it's a little easier to carry around. You're good, dude. Thank you for your help, man. Thank you, Silas.
Yeah, thank you, Silas. Thank you, Silas.
I'm going to shut this forge off, but I will start with like the shop tour of the forge. This is the lower model from what Joe is running, which is natural gas. I'm running propane. It's got a low pressure, high volume regulator on it. I sure do love the brick mountain. I don't want to pull the bricks off so you can see, but the whole thing is just refractory. I'm not using any KO wool. Takes a little longer to heat up, but I've found that it's pretty sweet. I can throw big bars in there and it doesn't crash my forge. Let's see, shop tour. Layout table, small welder underneath. I've got a pretty hokey 15-ton hydraulic press that's a little slow. I do definitely use it on some occasions, but not as often as I would if it was faster and stronger. Kind of fabrication rack. I've got my bigger welder, a mobile cart that I drag around the shop. I'm in a pretty small shop. This whole space is about 640 square feet with 8-foot ceilings and 7-foot doors. So every last little bit of space is in high demand in here. And so having things on wheels is real helpful. Drill press area. Oh, it looks like somebody just asked how long does it take this thing to get up to 2,000 degrees? I can probably get that forge up to 2,000 degrees in 20 minutes or something. Doesn't take that long, but it's not quite as fast as just a KO wool with a light refractory. Here I've got my bending vise station. They share a base, which is really solid, in my heavy steel block collection. I have a 100-pound little giant that turned 106 this year. It has a pretty interesting side story that it was originally purchased by the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company in 1914. It was the first year they'd ever made a profit. They were the original tractor manufacturer for the world. And that year that they bought this hammer, within 6 months, they were bought out by John Deere, which was a brand new company. And so it made parts for the first John Deere tractors. How it got to Central Oregon is a big question. Oh, thanks, Joe. We love you too. See you later. Better view of that Mark Manley treadle hammer. I've collected a few punch presses. I've got this one's a 20-ton. This one's a 15-ton. The 15 I haven't done really anything with, but I'm running a 5-horsepower phase converter to push these machines. This one's a 25-ton punch press that I have used for some things. It's pretty new to the shop though, so I haven't made a lot of tooling for it. Induction forge setup. Iron worker, which is another 3-phase unit that I'm running off of that phase converter, and kind of my fabrication or steel cutting corner. I think that's about it. Any other questions?